I feel like we should start with Liberation Day. This is Sam Seder, who got invited on the PBD podcast. I'm a big fan of Sam. I like watching his show, The Majority Report. While I don't listen to many other like alt media news broadcasts, he's is one of the few that I do. On occasion, mind you. I'm not tuning in every day, so don't ask me about this take or that take. And I think he does pretty well in conversations with conservatives. Of course, in his Jubilee performance, he did very well. Now, that's not to say that he necessarily had the stiffest of competition in every instance, but he did very well when it was a 1v20, having going after one after the other. His channel did very well off of that. People seemed to be quite convinced by a lot of the arguments he was making. And so Sam Seder is now, seemingly launching off that. He's starting to go on a few other shows. It's good work right now for Sam. And I want to see if he keeps up this role that he's on. But also, today was Liberation Day. The tariff wave has come. We tune into the stock market and all we see is red. So let's see how this group of money interested people, by the way, the PBD podcast, the dude at the top of it, I mean, he likes to consider himself a money man, like a real financial big brain. So I'm interested to see how he reacts to these market contractions as economists warn all across the economic spectrum, warn of a recession.
Set to unleash Liberation Day tariffs.
Okay, let me.
I'm happily fine with TSA preach.
We already got it. I'm moving. Adam,
move on.
Okay, I'm learning.
I'm moving on. No, I already learned. I understand. It's great. So we know what the argument is.
Progressive.
Trump set to unleash Liberation Day tariffs. President Trump will unveil Liberation Day tariffs on Wednesday at 4 p.m.
That was yesterday.
In a White House's Rose Garden, promising to stop America being ripped off and deliver a new golden age of U.S. industry. Though U.S. White House Press Secretary Karen Levin said that he was still perfecting it to make sure it's a perfect deal with advisors less than 24 hours before. Trump, who on Monday claimed he'd be very kind, has kept details vague with reports suggesting options from reciprocal tariffs to a 20% blanket rate or preferential treatment for some nations. Rob, if you want to play this, is this yesterday, Rob, or is this?
This is yesterday from the Rose Garden. This is
okay. Fantastic. Go for it.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time.
Again, 900 auto workers already laid off in places like Iowa and Michigan. Like, auto workers already getting laid off due to the tariffs placed on imported parts that are necessary to construct these cars here. And when you're thinking about, you're an investor trying to think if you're going to invest in the United States, not invest in the United States, invest in this company, invest in that company. Are you going to be investing in O'Reilly's Auto Parts to bet on people repairing the cars right now? Or are you going to invest in the auto industry to rebuild this base that Trump's asking for? Tough transition period.
You're all about to be liberated from your money.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again.
I can't wait till Trump's going to be up there like Jimmy Carter. We all need to carpool more. Have we considered carpooling? Remember to take the bus and the metro when you can. And when it comes to energy, wearing sweaters can be helpful to keep the gas prices down. We're not too far off, okay? Just a hop, skip, and a jump.
Going to make it wealthy, good and wealthy.
I also have another clip. This is the president discussing how the tariffs will help eliminate income tax. Possibly.
From 1789 to 1913, we were a tariff-backed nation, and the United States was proportionately the wealthiest it has ever been. So wealthy, in fact, that in the 1880s, they established a commission to decide what they were going to do with the vast sums of money they were collecting. We were collecting so much money so fast, we didn't know what to do with it. Isn't that a nice problem to have? What do you think, Marco? Good.
Is he talking about individual wealth, or like our nation not engaged in a deficit spending because the nature of our economies has transformed radically since the end of the gold standard? And many economists say actually deficit spending, while you should keep it within a few percentage points, is actually wasting economic potential. Because if you have 1% to 2% deficit spending, but if you keep it low enough, then you can actually be bringing in enough income to pay off the interest and getting more economic potential than you would have been than if you would have said, "Oh, we're not going to invest here. We're not going to invest there. We're not going to use this money." I don't want to get too into specifics here, but the economies have changed radically since 1880. And also, what is wealth in 1880 standards compared to today? It's just such two radically different times. Such radically different economies.
Problem. Marco would love that problem. But we don't have that problem anymore, but we're not going to have it very much longer, I will tell you. But they collected so much money, they actually formed a commission to determine what they were going to do with the money, who they were going to give it to, and how much. Then in 1913, for reasons unknown to mankind, they established the income tax so that citizens, rather than foreign countries, would start paying the money necessary to run our government. Then in 1929, it all came to a very abrupt end with the Great Depression, and it would have never happened if they had stayed with the tariff policy. It would have been a much different story. They tried to bring back tariffs to save our country, but it was gone. It was gone. It was too late. Nothing could have been done. It took years and years to get out of that depression, far longer than even FDR had that office right over there for a long period of time. The ramp system, that's rather intricate, was built because of him, and every time you walk up, you think of him, and he did a great job in many ways, but it lasted long beyond his terms, as you know. But it's not too late any longer, and we're going to start being smart, and we're going to start being very wealthy again. We're going to be wealthy as a country because they've taken so much of our wealth away from.
Mind you, for the average American, we're talking about a $4,000 to $5,000 increase, and that's like right now. Okay, we haven't even seen the reciprocal tariffs that we're going to get from foreign countries and foreign governments who are going to try to respond to this. We're talking about a $4,000 increased cost for the average American household, for the median household. I believe the exact number was 3,800, but give us 24 hours, it'll be over 4,000. Wait for some of those reciprocal tariffs, you'll see. I forget the exact number. I think it was 3,800, but still, like, going up to 4K. So how are we wealthier? Who's wealthier? Who is wealthier?
From us. We're not going to let that happen. We truly can be very wealthy. We can be so much wealthier than any country. It's not even believable, but we're getting smart.
Okay, Tom, your thoughts on this, and I'm going to come to you.
So markets love continuity, even if continuity is rooted in, trade inequality and things have been going on for decades.
Yep.
And to get through the shift, to get through the food poisoning, we can see markets react to sentiment, and markets don't know what to make of this. How many tariffs are going to stay for a day versus a week?
It's also, that's the thing. We don't know what the markets are completely uncertain of what Trump's going to do. Trump could keep one tariff, remove another, but everybody knows that Trump in 24 hours could decide, never mind, we're putting the tariff back in place. He said that the deal that he himself negotiated was garbage when he talks about NAFTA Plus. What does that say to you as a foreign leader? That it's just like a matter of time before he needs to put on a show again? So yeah, it creates a lot of uncertainty about the future of being able to import. If you're talking about you're a manufacturer of complex components or complex electronics, complex vehicles, if you're trying to import some doohickey or thingamabobber, the thingamabobber market is out of control right now. If you're trying to bring those things in, that's going to mean increased cost. That's going to mean increased cost for those manufacturers.
A month. You don't know how many tariffs are going to ship. Israel actually backed down and said, okay, we're done. Yesterday, correct? Israel went, hang on, we're good. We're backing off. We're done here. Interesting.
What does that even mean? Clarify that. They backed off of what? What did they back off of? A trade deficit? What did they clarify that? What does that mean? What were they doing?
Canada moved a couple of them, not the rest of them. Canada's still figuring it out, but they're.
What do you mean Canada is still figuring it out? Canada declared that they were going to do reciprocal tariffs, and if these go in place in 2 days, that's what they're going to do. I mean, this is all really based on the hope that they're just in the next 48 hours, Trump's going to back off of everything, or he's going to back off of these tariffs. How much of the hope is that Trump is just fibbing and it's just all playing like it's playing gay chicken?
Canada is blinking. So now the question is going to be, how long does all this take? And the markets, the markets don't like it. The markets don't like the sentiment of uncertainty. And that's why you have Jim Cramer and other people, we're getting killed out here. You're getting killed because you like the status quo that you had a minute ago, because you knew how to play that game and you knew how those markets worked. And
yeah, if you understand what's going on in the economy, then you can make safer investments. Yeah, if people understand what the government's doing, then they're gonna feel more comfortable investing. You can't control this game. Trump at any point could shoot himself in the foot. Wrecked liberal economists. Got him.
And respectfully, they're there to trade and make money in an increasing market. What is easier? It's easier to stay yesterday with what we've got, or there's a greater goal. And the greater goal is American jobs, and the jobs report was better than people thought.
We're losing manufacturing jobs. We've already lost thousands of manufacturing jobs.
Interesting. That's not a headline. Why is that buried? And you've got the uncertainty of the markets. Now, the uncertainty of markets makes everybody look at their 401k.
By the way, if you look at the manufacturing job reports from Trump's first term, they're not fantastic either.
And look at the things and be concerned. And yes, there's concern there. But you got to look down the street and see where we're going. And it is not easy to get through the food poisoning, but there is life on the other side. And you can see that's what the president is talking about. And I think we got to trust it. And we got to look at what's going on. We can already see little islands of change going on. So let's find out how everybody else moves on these tariffs.
Trust the plan. Trust the plan.
You said tariff was the last word. That was the only time you used the word tariffs. Look, I am in favor of tariffs when it is part of a specific agenda to build a certain industry
But a lot of this is across the board. Like, what does an across-the-board tariff do for us on things like microchip manufacturing when TSMC, the companies you're trying to affect with those tariffs, are already building those facilities in the United States anyway? All that means is increased costs for these microchips, for complex components for American electronics. That's all that means. It does nothing for no consumer or building up any industry. It just continues to say, hey, you know that thing you're already doing? Keep doing it. Oh, great. And what about all the goods that we import that are seasonal goods that we couldn't make in the United States due to climate conditions? When you talk about certain agricultural goods, there isn't different components for. And again, people keep talking about, don't worry, just try the American alternative. If there is 5,000 microphones, okay, we're back to elementary school. There's 5,000 microphones. And let's say 2,000 of them are made in America, 3,000 of them are made overseas, and you just add a 25% tariff, or depending upon how many borders it crosses, 50% tariff, depending on which countries come or whatever, 90% Vietnam, and you get rid of them, you take them off the shelves, or they've seen this increase in price. If you're the manufacturer of those American microphones, you now have more people coming to you to buy your microphones. Okay, that's the intention. But that also means that your supply is strained more, which increases prices. And not only does it increase prices because your prices are strained more, but because you don't have competition that's global anymore. Now you only have to deal with 330 million potential competitors narrowed down to whoever's in your industry instead of 7.3 billion. And so that's going to mean also increased prices for domestically made goods as well. And when these companies' main motivation is profit, you don't think they're going to take advantage of the bottleneck? Why wouldn't they? Trump would. If he was in their position, you don't think he would? He talked about it all the times. If you set the rules that way, I'm going to break them. That's what he talked about when people asked him, did he buy out politicians and such?
A certain industry within a certain region. This is absolute insanity. First off, they're going to use this as potential revenue. Like he says, it's not going to replace the income tax, but what they're going to do is they're going to use it as an excuse to cut taxes on wealthy people. You guys will be very excited about that. But who's going to pay that tax? If it's $600 billion a year, as they're saying, over a 10-year period, it's going to be $6 trillion. That is going to be an average of $5,000 tax on Americans. It is a regressive tax. I like taxation, but I like progressive taxation, because $5,000 for somebody making $40,000 is a much bigger problem than $5,000 for me or for you. And so this is a regressive tax on Americans. Now, if it's to work to build up industry, and I don't know how we're going to have a banana industry in this country, or how we're going to have a lumber industry to rival Canada's, because we just don't have the wood, and so on. I mean, people get the idea. You know, there's certain industries you can actually say, this is one we're going to build.
Also, do we want to cut down those trees? Right? We already have a green space and deforestation problem.
Up. Maybe there will be a low-cost clothing business that revives in this country, but I doubt it. But if tariffs are meant to work to build up industry, that means people aren't paying those taxes. So the tariffs may not raise the money, but what will happen is, and I think you understand this too about pricing, if the price of goods goes up on average, and it looks like in some of these places it's going to go way above 10%. I mean, some of, like, Vietnam, like 39%, China, 75%. They're adding all these tariffs on it. It's insane. Then U.S. companies, to the extent that there are ones that are making these same goods, they have between 0 and 75% to raise their prices, and they will, because the price of this, there's a certain elasticity, and they can justify raising their prices 5% if their nearest competitor is 25% raise in price. I mean, they'll do it because there's some products that people just can't do without. So this is such a disaster, and of course, what it also does is, last time we had a major financial crisis in this country in 2008, it took 6 years for the stock market to get back at parity. You're talking about 401ks have been a disaster insofar as, like, people just don't put as much money in them as they should because they don't have the money on a regular basis. But God help those people if there wasn't Social Security, a robust Social Security, because if you've got to retire and you're 65 and you were planning on retiring, you have a small 401k, it is screwed, and it may not come back for years. Maybe it'll come back tomorrow. But
how do you feel about reciprocal tariffs?
Here's the other absolute insanity. Those tariffs that he claimed on that chart are not tariffs. Every economist out there has been saying
it's crazy. The math equation that they put out there is, it's tied to no economic logic. The Trump equation, this is how they got their tariff number. And again, tariff means tax. It means tax placed upon imported good. The way he did it was by taking the total amount of goods exported by said country and then minusing the total amount of imported goods from the United States that they take from us, minusing that from that, then taking the number from that and dividing it by the total amount of exported goods towards the United States. Now, if that seems confusing and like, okay, why is that the method? It's because it is. And I think the reason that they did it in this manner is to confuse people as to how they got these numbers in the first. I honestly think that's part of the reason. I think part of the reason is to confuse people. I do think that the Trump administration is pretty obsessed with trade surpluses and trade deficits, and this is really what it's about. It's not about tariffs. It's not about reciprocal tariffs. It's about eliminating the trade deficits that we have with countries like Vietnam. But Vietnam is not going to be able to get rid of its massive trade deficit with the United States, especially when, again, we wanted companies to go to Vietnam to export to the United States as a competitor to China, as somewhere a company could go to that would not have the same supply chain risks as the Chinese. I would still have some, definitely considering the region it is, the waters it has to travel to get to the United States, but not as many potential political supply chain risks. And now we're just throwing a huge wrench in that by saying that tariff, and this is the way he's talking to the public. He's saying that Vietnam has a 90% tariff on the United States. 90% tariff. On its face, it's ridiculous. There's no 90% tariff on American goods being imported. He's talking about a specific like trade surplus. He's talking about a trade surplus. These are totally different economic ideas. But if he just tells people they're trading more with us than we are with them, so we need to tariff them, and explaining it in that manner is not as easy to justify as, oh, they're taxing us, so we're taxing them. So if you just say we're they're taxing us, even if they're not taxing us at the rates that our government's talking about, the rates they're talking about are complete lies. It's an easier campaign message. And like, again, and I said this earlier on today's stream, you come home for your 9 to 5. You work from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. You get home to your wife and kids. Are you going to spend that time breaking down complex trade agreements? Or are you going to spend that time eating around the dinner table and jerking off? Probably the latter.
Saying, where did he get these numbers?
I guess in my scenario, it was a loveless marriage.
They're starting to figure out that they did some weird... There's countries on there that don't even have people in them. It's bizarre. They took like the CIA fact book and just made a list of countries. I mean, it's completely for show.
Which countries?
Google it. There's like 1 or 2 places where there's no people.
Every single one of those countries.
No,
is a massive country.
they released a bit.
The Falkland Islands got its own specific tariff rate. Every single country is a gigantic. The Falkland Islands are gigantic. There's more sheep than people. That this is the economic powerhouses we need to declare war upon. There are certain islands that we have placed tariffs on that is entirely inhabited by penguins. We're tariffing penguins just for show, just for performance. The penguins have been ripping off the United States for too long. Those jobs could be going, those acting jobs and Happy Feet, they could be going to. So, no, they're not all gigantic countries. Some of these countries are not even countries.
Big release. He'll find it. And these are not actual tariffs that are being applied to us.
Every single one of these countries.
Oh, there is
China,
India. Are we sure there's people there?
China, the EU, Vietnam, Taiwan, Japan,
Do it
India, South Korea.
He's starting with the big ones. He's saying he's naming the countries he knows.
Thailand, Switzerland, Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia. Which of those countries aren't there not people living?
Occurred.
They make me question freedom of expression.
Got a tier 2 subscription.
Thank you, Ukraine Groiper, the most progressive member of the community, as known. Man, it makes me question freedom of expression, man. I'll always come back to it, but sometimes some people say something so stupid, so asinine. You just got to think, man, everyone got rights. Everyone got them. This guy too. This guy too. He listed off the big countries off the list and said, which one of those are not big countries? It's a list with 60 countries on it. Again, if you went through all of them, Falkland Islands, or again, you go to these lower ones on the list. He just started with India. Yeah, if you start with India, people know that India is a country. It's like I'm telling you that this book has problems with its writing. And then you read one page, the first page of the book, and you close it and you said, I didn't see any spelling mistakes.
Put in the Trump just added a tariff on a country with no.
All right, but okay, so he added one country that maybe
it's just an indication of how slapdash this is.
No, dude,
but these are not tariffs. These are not
on one random little.
Those reciprocal tariffs.
What do you mean random little? If you're tariffing 60 countries, it's like, oh, it's a random little tariff. They got 10% tariff on any country across the board. That's a big tariff. That's a big tax. If you went to the American people and said, you're going to pay a 10% just tax, don't use the word tariff, tax on XYZ, or 50% when we're talking about Chinese goods, they're not going to take that like, oh, it's just a 10% tax. Oh, it's just a 10% increase in the sales. It's 10%. If we're putting tariffs out there, if we're changing our economic policy this way, if we're changing the entire basis for which American wealth was built upon in the post-World War II global structure, it has to be done with some thought put into it. And if you're tariffing countries that don't have people in them to trade goods with you, then you have to think that there is a certain amount of just grab whatever you can, throw it in the basket, and just keep going. To just, it is slapdash. I think that's an accurate description. I mean, just think of the logic they use to get to these tariff numbers. That puts Vietnam at 90%, a ridiculous number.
They're not. Those aren't tariffs. He is combined. He is basically what they've.
Like when I look through the actual numbers, I'll see like 36%, 40%, 60%. I'll look at the actual number, and the tariff number is like 2%. They're off by margins so ridiculous that even comparing them is by near impossible.
Tried to figure out is like, where'd they get these numbers from? And they have taken the trade deficit and divided it by what we send there. And that's the way that they've assumed that that's a tariff. It's basically, they're just saying we have these trade deficits. And of course we have trade deficits with certain places, because there's some products that we're just never going to make. And there's some places that don't have the buying power that we have. I mean, so this is just bizarre. And even like,
what could the Cambodians do to eliminate our trade deficit with them? What are they supposed to buy from the United States? Is the goal just to like get them to budge a little bit and just see what kind of concession, just shock them all with economic recession? The possible is basically pull the pin on an economic hand grenade and say, buy more American or die. Is that the strategy? Because there's a fault to that strategy is, you're holding the grenade.
Former Trump trade people were just like, well, maybe it's just an opening salvo for a negotiation. And maybe it is. I mean, I'm just fortunate that I'm not planning on retiring soon and my 401k isn't decimated. But this is going to cause inflation. And these prices are not going to come down. I mean, Trump is trying to tell...
I think I saw one of the estimates put out for the year-on-year inflation rate increase because of this. And we already saw inflation has not benefited from the first few months of the Trump term. But the numbers that I saw was a 2.3% on top of what's already happening, increase in inflation on top of the $3,800 impact per household. If you're curious where my numbers come from, it comes from Yale, the Yale Budget Lab specifically.
U.S. automakers don't raise your prices. And if he wants to impose price controls, he would not be the first Republican president to do this. Nixon was the first president and the only president, as far as I know, to do price controls, at least in the modern era. I'm not necessarily against price controls in certain situations, but this is like such an own goal. It's fascinating.
Well, of course.
No, Jimmy Carter's wage and price controls were decades before Nixon. Whoops, checking my notes. No, leave this after.
What? Well, I look, maybe I'm stupid. Why are we talking about Jimmy Carter? What did Jimmy Carter's price controls have to do with what?
Right.
It wasn't just Nixon.
Okay, so Sam's as confused as I am. So I'm not just there wasn't like is there a point there that I'm not identifying? Was that a zinger of some? Yeah, was that a zinger? Was that supposed to be a zinger? I feel very unzinged. I'm feeling no zinginess in my blood.
Well, Nixon started it, right?
And there was no other president since
Nixon started it.
I was just kind of correcting that.
Okay.
Back to your rant.
I'm for price controls.
You are for price controls.
Well, I think we should have applied some in the wake of COVID. Yes, there was a lot of gouging going on. I think everybody knows that.
Adam.
I think it's...
I mean, there's plenty of...
Even the Trump team, after they got elected, they started talking about price gouging as one of their reasons for why the prices are up in order to divert. So, I mean, I don't know. Both Harris and Trump eventually at some point yapped about price gouging. So it would be supposedly bipartisan, but nothing's bipartisan because bipartisanship depends upon working with the other team.
Data that at least 40% of the inflation was a function of gouging in some form or another.
Well, Sam, number one, respect for you for being here. I don't think, genuinely, whether you're a progressive or democratic socialist or...
Why? What's with the whiskey barrel thing behind that? I've been thinking about buying a whiskey barrel for my my apartment. And I looked at those as one of the options, but I want to get like a full whiskey barrel as like a shelf. I just feel like it's a much bigger statement than like, I don't know, the desk fake semi whiskey barrel. Just like, if you're going to get a whiskey barrel, just go full in on the whiskey barrel. Go full in, like go in or go home.
You socialist, you're talking to a bunch of capitalists and an angry patriot. That's cool. Like, we're not going to change your mind. You're probably not going to change our mind. But what we're solving for is the truth. The reality is these reciprocal tariffs, what Pat asked you about. Are you familiar with the golden rule?
Do unto others as you want to do unto them. Is that it?
Bingo. Do you abide by the golden rule?
I mean, in my personal relationships, yes.
There you go. So the golden rule is you want to do something to me, I'm going to do it to you. If you treat me fairly, I'll treat you fairly. If you're good with me, I'll be good with you. But
What
if you want to,
constitutes fair?
hold on, guy.
Okay, well, if that's the policy you want the Trump administration to abide by, then I don't think that, Poles or Brits or all these Europeans dying in caves in Afghanistan and then being told, oops, your defense doesn't matter, seems like the golden rule. Do upon others or what you would want them to do to you. If we have 9/11 too, and we have another big terror attack, how eager are these countries going to be to stick their necks out to go send their youth to go die chasing whatever terror group decided to do that? I'm just saying, like, if we're going to apply this principle, we need to expand it outside this administration, outside of the conversation just around tariffs, which I don't even think this works on tariffs. Because again, Sam explained the rates that they are saying are tariffs, the 90%, the this percent, that, they're just made up numbers. And a lot of the instances, they're saying they're double digits, like 60%, 70%, crazy tariffs, and it's a single digit tariff. Or it has to do with like quotas, where you hit to a certain level and above that quota, you hit a tariff. But I mean, we have that as well to protect American businesses.
If you want to actually take advantage of me, then all of a sudden we might have to have a economic war. And that's what's happening. So if you show up that list, I know you want to focus on the one random country that you can't name. Hold on.
Tell us how England is taking advantage of us.
Well, England is part of the UK. We understand that. But if you want
England is part of the UK. His question was, some people, you just need to turn off the microphones. The question was, okay, he comes out and he says, we're getting back at those getting at us. That we're, they've been screwing us, so we're screwing them. Is the essentially like, eye for an eye is the philosophy he's putting forward. He says, you can bring up the random penguin country, why we're getting back at the penguins, and that's whatever. But most of these countries, they're screwing us. Okay, England. Why is England screwing us? England's in the United Kingdom. We already know that, and then he just moves on. What did he think was going to happen? Of course he was going to ask you to, okay, how's this country screwing us? Of course he's going to go through the list of countries. How's Ukraine screwing us? How's this country screwing us? What did he expect? What was that with England's in the... He was talking about the UK. What did you think he was talking about? That's just plain silly. And you see how quickly he said it too? It's silly rhetoric. It's trying to move away from a potent question to go back to his like eye for an eye spiel.
England is taking advantage of us.
Well, the one random country that you can't name. Hold on.
Tell us how England is taking advantage of us.
Well, England is part of the UK. We understand that. But if you want to go
how is
numbers,
the UK?
Sorry, pause again. It's just painful. God, my goodness. If I die from a brain tumor, can you guys send my bill to the PBD podcast? Thank you for the $5 Canadian. When are you expecting your passport? Good show tonight. I finally got my state ID. I haven't said this on stream. Let me tell you guys, one of the most painful... Okay, God, we're supposed to finish this segment, but I'm just going to throw this out here. I filed for my state ID right after my house burned down because I knew that I was supposed to go to Ukraine. So I file for it. They lose it in the mail. And they don't know where it is. And they didn't even tell me either. I waited like a month and a half, and I thought this is the longest ID. I need to get my state ID before I can get a passport because I need a state ID to like, hey, here's my official documentation in order to get it. And I finally go there. They just lost it. I'm just thinking, is there like a Dylan Burns ID just flying around, floating around somewhere? Just lost. And you want to know the worst part about it? They made me have to pay for another one. And then, of course, I paid for the expedite it. So like a $30, what should have been like not even, it's like a $25 expense ended up being like $75 in total. And like what should have taken like a week or two ended up taking like nearly 2 months. So now that I have my state ID finally, and I'm not getting like the stamp on my hand every time I go into a bar or a concert telling me I'm under 18, now I can start the process to get my passport and hopefully expedite that. So I should be getting out of the country by the end of this month or early May. That's the plan. You have my ID, Alan Nix. It would be Alan Nix. It would be Alan Nix.
Okay.
Sam,
Taking advantage.
hold on. You know, when people talk, you listen, and then when you talk, I listen. That's how
Okay.
conversations go. You know that.
I'm just asking you to clarify
Okay,
your
I'm
statement.
going to get there. So the way that these tariffs work is if they're doing something
So to be
us,
clear, he's not answering the how is England screwing us quite. He doesn't know how to answer how the UK is screwing us. You want to know what's the truth? We're probably screwing the UK. You want to know why? Because the UK decided that they wanted to, you know, wave around their, and I'm sorry, this is the bluntest way to put it. They wanted to wave around their flag, drink their tea and crumpets. They wanted to feel super independent. They decided they were going to leave the European Union because they were going to control their own borders. Then they left the European Union. They didn't get all the NHS money that they said they were going to get, or at least the pro-EU Brexit campaigners said they were going to get. They didn't get control of their own borders. They didn't have a solution for the Ireland crisis because there was a real threat that the Irish were going to start shooting each other again because, oh, snap, you're going to close the border in Northern Ireland. You're going to violate the Good Friday Agreement. If you want to get the IRA back to doing car bombs, it's violating the Good Friday Agreement. And they have all these problems that just make Brexit a disaster. That has turned the large majority of the British public against Brexit, where they voted for it, but now 66% of Britons think it was a terrible idea, right? Now, they, in return for leaving the European Union, leaving the single market, they had to find new trading partners. You want to know who it was primarily? The United States. We have immense leverage when it comes to our relationship with Great Britain, and it's why Keir Starmer, despite all of this nonsense that Donald Trump has engaged in diplomatically, is going to him with letters from the king trying to earn his favor because we have immense economic leverage over the Brits. How the child has surpassed the father, huh? I mean, that's old news, but now it's getting to the point where they're, like, okay, Grandpa, sit down a little bit. Not to be mean.
us will do something then. Rob, show the picture.
So my point isn't to beat down on the UK. My point is just to say we have immense economic leverage over the UK already. Why do we need to tariff anything?
I would love to hear what you think. So all these countries have people living in them. All these countries, these, China, the EU, that's part of.
I love that listen how low this has gotten. Hey, these countries, people live there because the Trump administration fucks up so bad, they put countries on the list that don't live there, that the new standard is, hey, look at the tariff list. There's countries with people on them. Congratulations.
Yeah.
All those countries over there. You get the UK over there, Vietnam, Taiwan, Japan, India. I'm pretty sure there's a bunch of people living in India, South Korea, Thailand. All these countries are charging us. So the reality is, if you go through the numbers, not feeling, Sam.
There's the whole list.
Sam, I need you to pay attention. I know you're on the phone.
Charging us. I got it.
Here we go now.
The whole list.
They're charging us way more
90% of Vietnam
to access their markets than we are charging.
I'm gonna die.
That is not. That's
I'm gonna die. These people are so. I'm done. I actually quit. No, I quit. I quit. I'm not gonna watch the rest of this. They're too stupid. No. I just refuse. They're not listening. They're not even attempting to listen to Sam. He sat there and he explained to them the mathematical bullshit equation that the Trump administration used in order to get to the 90% Vietnam number, and then get us to immediately, it's just one in one ear, out the other, and they're like, wow, but they're tariffing us 90%. Because Trump, it says here on his numbers, is 90%. He just spent 15 minutes breaking. It's not worth it, man. You can't get through. There's no luck. You just can't. I just can't do it. I tap out. I can already see the rest of the conversation from here. We'll watch maybe more of this at a different date, but no, I can see the circle from a mile away. I'm not entering that time loop. We're not doing that here at the Dylan Burns TV show, okay? Go. Ay.